Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
He's in the building!
Drink the moment. Drink it.
I said empty your mind.
Coquettish and coy. Ow. Ow.
What?
And there's people that are dying.
The wickedly talented.
More than great. It was historic.
Crack is
Work.
Oh, good for you.
I have to apologize.
One of the hottest.
Welcome back to The Reheat, a podcast that reexamines the hottest, spiciest, fieriest celebrity news and scandals of yesteryear and asks, how would we react to the same events if they transpired today? I'm your co-host, Sadaf Hassan.
And I'm Sarah Sahagian, your other co-host. And this week, we're going to do something new. We're going to start every once in a while doing retrospectives on media texts we love. And for our first retrospective, we're tackling Gossip Girl. That's right, the iconic CW teen series. First, let's go back in time. It's the OOs, and a beautiful young starlet is throwing a house party for her friends. She's made appearances on popular teen shows like Seventh Heaven and Veronica Mars, and she appears on the verge of getting her big break. When in walks in a brooding, still boyish-looking actor who is also auditioning his heart out around town. He wasn't actually invited to the party, but was brought by a friend. He doesn't make much of an impression on our hostess. In fact, the beautiful starlet hosting the party won't even remember him. Little do this lonely boy and beautiful party-throwing starlet know, art is about to imitate life, because these people are Leighton Meester and Penn Badgley, who met in a scene suspiciously similar to the birthday party to which Dan Humphrey was accidentally invited and at which he fell in love with the world of the Upper East Side. So, what was the inspiration for Gossip Girl? Well, it was actually based on a series of books. The series was a smash hit when I was in high school, and while the hard-partying ways of the Upper East Side private school kids it chronicled depicted a more debaucherous version of prep school life than my own experience, the Toronto prep school girls I went to school with loved these novels. And so did kids around North America. Soon, none other than Josh Swartz, the creator of the OC, was teaming up with co-producer Stephanie Savage to create a TV adaptation of this hit YA series. So, Sadaf, when did you first discover the world of Gossip Girl? Through the books or the series? And what does this depiction of life on the Upper East Side mean to you?
Okay, first of all, I'm so excited we're doing this because I too love Gossip Girl. Although, we'll get to this, but I pretend the last couple seasons didn't happen. But I was so excited when this was coming out because I was a big CW girl. Me and my sister would watch everything that they had. And when Gossip Girl was getting set to go, we were pumped because it was being promoted, as you said, the creator of the OC bringing this to us. And my God, the OC lives deep in my DNA, even deeper than Gossip Girl. So very excited. Oh, yeah. And I'm sure we'll do that one day. But actually, we have to. But oh my gosh, I loved this show from the very first episode. All of the characters were so well drawn out. The cast was gorgeous. Loved Penn Badgley from the very start. Are you kidding me? Loved me a little Chuck Bass. Loved all four of the main cast. I didn't even know that the books were a thing, actually. And then I think the books were a little bit under my generation. So then I found out about the books. I was like, do I need to read the books? Everybody was like, no, just watch the show. And I was like, okay, great. And I ate it up.
It was delicious. So I discovered it when I was in my last year of university, because that's when it debuted. And it was actually a girl I'd gone to prep school with who recommended it to me. We're at the same university. We're taking a gender studies class together, and she had good taste, and I knew it. And her name was Jacqueline. Shout out Jacqueline if you're listening. Lovely person. And she said, okay, Sarah, you have to watch this show called Gossip Girl. And I was turned off because they had the same tartan as I had in high school. So I thought it would be too similar to my high school experience. And I actually had a good high school experience, but I was like, I don't need to watch High School, the show. Right. And Jacqueline said to me, listen, no, it's not like it was for us. It's much more interesting. Also, the clothes, when they're not in their uniforms, are amazing. And Jacqueline was super stylish, and I was always looking for fashion inspo back then. So
Mm.
I gave the show a try just for the clothes, and then I became obsessed with the characters, with the plot, with the drama. And I also became obsessed with it as a feminist because I felt like it had a lot to say about the feminist vacuum those girls were being raised in. And I'm going to talk
Mm.
more about that later. But as a gender studies scholar, it really appealed to me.
I love that so much, and I've always been curious because we've never gone deep on what your personal experience was like in comparison. So I'm glad it wasn't as chaotic as this show. I mean, really, whose life is, but I know we'll probably get to the style point. I just want to say, I know now the fashion doesn't hold up, but at the time, it was groundbreaking, okay? And I wanted to have every outfit Serena van der Woodsen wore. I think I'm now more a little bit more of a Blair, but oh my God, I loved it. And the headbands alone was like a great 90s
Headbands!
throwback. Ah,
I love headbands so much.
I know.
I actually know, before we get into this, I understand how the Blair headband thing happened. Now that I am a mother, I feel a real kinship with Eleanor Waldorf. So my daughter doesn't like it when I do her hair. She just won't let me do it. And she always looks like Cousin It. And she's quite good at soccer. So she was at a soccer game and she just wouldn't let me put her hair in a ponytail, wouldn't let me put it in clips. She was refusing. My daughter's name is Beatrix. I call her B, but not B with the letter. I call her BEA. Anyway, she was just about to trip all over herself at soccer because she plays hard. And at one point during the game, this was a couple months ago, I screamed at her, B, come here. And she came and I was like, you need to wear this headband. She's like, no, I don't want to wear the headband. I said, yes, you're going to wear it. It's your crown. And she's like, I'm listening. So this is obviously what Eleanor Waldorf had to do at some point. And then her daughter just said, okay, fine, I'll wear the headband. It's my crown. And then she just never stopped wearing the
Oh,
headband. And that's a victory as a mother. So I'm like, I'm sure this was a scene from Blair Waldorf's kindergarten life. Like, I'm
I
sure.
adore that. I love that. I never even thought about the headband being a crown, but I think you're actually spot on because that's very Blair.
It's a crown. It's sort of tiara adjacent, which Leighton herself has said, and so have the costume
Mm.
designers. Like that's an integral part of the character.
Oh.
Um, but I'm pretty sure at some point Eleanor was just like, "Christ, this kid won't let me braid her hair. She won't let me put it in a ponytail. Dude, it's your crown." And just bought her a million headbands, and then that was that.
I love this so much. Okay, tell us more about the history of
Okay.
this show. Let's get back into it.
So when the series was announced, book fans quickly decided that Blake Lively, star of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, would be a perfect fit. So there was a lot of chatter online about this. They thought she would make a great Serena van der Woodsen. The only problem with that casting, another gorgeous up and coming young blonde was also auditioning for the part, and that young blonde was Leighton Meester. So, Sadaf, can you see Leighton Meester as Serena van der Woodsen? How do you think that would have changed the trajectory of the show?
You're taking me back because I forgot about the extreme heat and controversy simply around their hair colors. But
Hmm.
I think Leighton can do absolutely anything and play any role
Yeah.
because she is an unreal actress, just even outside of Gossip Girl. So she definitely could have. However, I think that she was born and meant to play this character, Blair. Blair was my favorite character in the show. She was just phenomenal in it. And she looks better as a brunette, if I dare say. Those big, beautiful curls she'd sometimes have, that thick
Hmm.
mane. It really suited her. What do you think?
She has brunette energy. She is
She
now one of our most
does.
iconic brunettes. I would say she is the most iconic millennial brunette. If you think of what
Oh.
does a millennial brunette look like, I don't think that there is a more iconically brunette millennial, right? There are other iconic millennials, maybe more famous than she is, but not iconic for being brunettes. In my
Mm.
mind, she is our version of, Veronica, in terms of the Archie comic books from back in the day. She's the millennial Veronica. I just can't see her any other way. So I know that's not her natural hair color, but I get so upset when she
I
goes back to
know.
blonde.
I know it really suits her, and I would actually say Blake is definitely an iconic blonde for our generation.
Hmm.
Say what you will about her, the hair was definitely a thing at the time. It's not a shock she put together a hair care line recently. It's a little, maybe a decade too late, but it was
Yeah,
definitely a
yeah.
thing.
The timing was not great. Partway through the auditioning process, Meester herself made the decision to tell producers she would be a better fit for Blair, Serena's scheming best friend and frequent foil. Leighton even went so far as to dye her hair brown to prove she could pull off the character's brunette look from the book. In 2017, Chase Crawford told Vanity Fair that when he first saw the sweet-tempered Meester at his audition, he thought, I just don't see her as Blair Waldorf. I can't see it. But then she turned around, quote, slyly in her chair with Blair's soon-to-be trademark headband on, and she snapped into character. And he says, I just remember thinking, that girl can act. She's the perfect girl for this.
Oh.
But as perfect for the part as Leighton was, she actually had very little in common with this Park Avenue prep school princess she portrayed. To quote Leighton herself, I don't know how I tune into that upbringing or lifestyle because that's not how I was raised at all. And she's not lying. When Leighton Meester was born, her mother, Constance, was serving time in prison on drug-related charges, though she was allowed to stay with her baby Leighton in a halfway house for a few months after her birth. While on Gossip Girl, Leighton Meester also sent $7,500 a month home to support her younger brother. And later, Constance Meester tried to sue Leighton for millions more in 2011, but later lost the case. However, despite coming from a different background, Leighton has also said that she liked Blair's fierceness, which really comes out in her performance. At first, Serena seemed like she would be the unequivocal star of Gossip Girl. With the iconic Kristen Bell as its narrator, Gigi premiered in the fall of 2007, and no one can deny Serena's return to Manhattan is the inciting force for that pilot. To make things even juicier, Blake Lively even dated Penn Badgley, her on-screen love interest, for a couple of seasons. Reflecting on the experience of smooching Penn both on and off screen, Blake told Vanity Fair years later, I remember there was one point where we were just afraid of how our personal lives overlapping our work life could be perceived by our bosses. But it seemed to turn out that just everyone wanted them to date. So it didn't matter. It just fueled interest in the show. When Gossip Girl debuted, everything seemed ripe for Serena to be its unequivocal star. So the fact that Leighton Meester voluntarily pivoted to play Blair during the casting process might seem like she capitulated to Lively. Blair Waldorf, at least in the pilot, didn't have a ton of main character energy. I mean, Serena was a free spirit who would make out with abandon with a boy she liked in public. And Serena's relationship with upper middle class Brooklyn outsider Dan Humphrey was supposed to be the romantic heart of the show. By contrast, Blair debuted as an insecure mean girl, desperately hanging on to her position as school queen bee, a role she only got because her more popular best friend Serena skipped town after sleeping with Blair's boyfriend, the year before, off screen. We don't actually see that happening. But by the midpoint of season 1, Good Girl Blair had emerged as the fan favorite, partly because of Leighton's dry comic timing and almost spookily good acting, and partly because the writers had accidentally stumbled on what some dubbed the teenage Ross and Rachel, Chuck and Blair.
Oh.
In real life, Ed Westwick, who portrayed Chuck Bass, dated co-star Jessica Soar, and Leighton Meester had a dalliance with Sebastian Stan, who portrayed recurring bad boy Carter Bazin. But despite the fact that both were hooking up with other co-stars, their chemistry burned up the screen. When Blair had sex for the first time with Chuck in the back of his limo after having performed at a burlesque club he owned.
God, okay, pause, Sarah, because you're taking me back. I just remember me and my sister absolutely dying. We were waiting. And then the day it happened, I feel like we were all talking about it the next day. I miss having TV like this, when you're younger. It's nothing like it. That was juicy, is all I can say.
It was juicy. I mean, it's absurd. How do you even have sex in a moving car? Like, I just logistically...
It's hard enough in a still car.
I don't know how that even works, let alone doing your first time that way. Like, I don't know. But it doesn't have to be real. Willful suspension of disbelief. That's fine. But that episode, it's funny, the writers accidentally stumbled on that. They weren't supposed to be the one true pairing. What happened was the show premiered sort of at the beginning of fan feedbacks on the internet, right? Where fans now could talk about things on social media. And all the comments were like, OMG, I love Chuck and Blair together, right? So the fans kind of wanted it, similar to how the writers pivoted to make Logan Veronica Mars's chief love interest.
Yeah.
So they were kind of giving the fans what they wanted. They realized it made sense. And it actually does make sense. And I don't think it's because of the writing. I think it's because Ed Westwick was madly in love with Leighton Meester, which he has said many times.
Yeah.
And so anytime they're on screen together, he just looks at her adoringly for those first few episodes, right? I actually think for the first few episodes, Blair's his mom. He goes to
Oh.
her for that kind of approval. He doesn't have a mother figure. Even in Victor
Mm.
Vitrola in the beginning, he shows her the
Oh.
burlesque club before he shows it to his dad, seeking her approval first, right? And kind of like you would with a mom, like, Mom, can I show this to dad? Right? And that actually, that groundwork, which was unintentional because I don't think they thought they were going to end up together. The writers have said at first he was pure villain. I think that groundwork is important for making him as obsessed with her as he is later, because it's like, okay, this girl was already your best friend. She was your mom's substitute. Then you have sex with her, and now she's your everything. So you can never lose her.
Okay, so Victor Victrola was my favorite episode, is my favorite
Hmm.
episode. Thank you for
Hmm.
that. You're giving me so many great flashbacks right now. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Also, let's just address this. Listen, Lane Meester can have chemistry evidently with anybody
Hmm.
because not only,
Hmm.
as you said, was she dating Sebastian Stan, but then Ed
Hmm.
Westwick was in love with her. They had probably one of my personal favorite TV relationships ever. I thought they were so hot. And listen, I know he was a problematic character, problematic relationship, but I loved it. I fucking loved it. They were so great together. I remember watching bloopers where they'd be like making
Hmm.
out in the scene and they would just keep going after they would call cut, or like she would be so flustered because she was so deep in it right when they called
Yeah.
cut. And as you said, he'd be just gawking at her like in love.
I know.
Listen, I feel like this is definitely Friends is a good comparison because I feel like a lot of them hooked up and we don't even know the stories. As the Friends cast has told us years later, they definitely had hookups we still don't know about. And I love that.
Yeah, I actually don't think she did hook up with Ed Westwick. I think he
I just want to
probably
believe
always wanted
Sarah.
to.
It's my dream too.
By the end, I think she's also not into him. So if they did hook up,
Yeah.
I don't think it went well, because you can see there's a blooper of the episode where he proposes to her. It's the finale where, and it's actually quite funny to watch. It shows you that Leighton is an amazing actress because they're kissing, and then she looks at him adoringly at the end of the cut, like, this is the only person I could ever love. And then they call cut, and she says, "Gross, you got your spit on me." And then he's like, "I'm sorry." Just like she's not into him, and he just looks really apologetic and embarrassed.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that one, but that also cracks me up. I love that. They did shoot this for some time. I think a lot of this cast got quite tired of each other by the end.
I think so. I think that's what happened, but they had amazing chemistry together, and
Yeah.
it worked. Their characters together made sense, right? I mean, she was the girl who was always trying to be perfect. He was the boy who was like proudly a screw up.
Hmm.
And at one point, like at the end of season one, she says, "I make him better, he makes me worse. That's why we work together."
Ooh,
And
yeah.
I loved this pairing, and I loved the show so much. I wrote a blog about it, guys, in grad school. I literally
Oh.
I pretended it wasn't a Gossip Girl blog, but I rarely wrote about other things. I wrote a grad school essay about Victor Vitrola, which I will quote later. Essay for my master's at the London School of Economics on Victor
Okay,
Vitrola.
please send me the complete essay, and if you can find that blog, we will link it in the show notes.
It's too embarrassing. It's too embarrassing how much I love the show. It's too embarrassing. So we now know that really a lot of what made the show really sizzle, we've talked about it, was the Chuck and Blair relationship that they discovered in episode 7 of season 1. So they discovered it early on, almost by accident, like many of the world's greatest discoveries, like gravity. No one intended to discover gravity. And
Gravity and Gossip Girl.
exactly, exactly. Well, there was a lot of controversy about the show. The reception was not completely positive. The Boston Herald referred to it as every parent's worst nightmare, and scenes like dangerous limo sex probably didn't help. But the show actually leaned in and quoted that in its advertising, which I thought was really funny to make kids even more interested in watching it.
Those ads were iconic. I remember them having them across the subway stations. They were, first of all, they were gorgeous ads. And
Mm.
I do remember thinking I can't let my mom know I watch this show when she sees these commercials. But it was good. It was smart.
So, Sadaf, do you think Leighton always knew that she could turn Gossip Girl into the Blair show? Did she know that in her hands, Blair could eclipse Serena and become the true star? Did she capitulate when she dyed her hair blonde and said, "I don't want to be Serena anymore"? Or was this a coup?
I don't know if she knew all of that, but I do think she knew that Blair was the better, juicier character. And
Mhm.
technically, over time, sorry, I shouldn't say Blake, I should say Serena. Her character certainly goes through a lot. There's a lot of complexities there, but she's
Mhm.
definitely a bit of a straight man overall, whereas Blair gets to do so much more. And it was the smartest. It's one of those amazing choices where you get to see someone make where it changes the entire direction of their career. And it's so smart she did that. But I doubt she knew. I doubt she knew, but who knows? She's a smart lady.
And I think this is me projecting. This is me wanting her to be Blair. And I don't think she is like Blair. But part of me wonders there must be some overlap. And maybe it's the scheming. Maybe she can scheme for her own benefit the way Blair can. I don't think she's mean like Blair is. Not at all. I think she seems like a very kind person. That's what everyone says about her. But I do think she knew I can outact this girl. And that's my weapon.
Mm.
Like, I can outact her because she can. That's not even a mean thing to think about Blake Lively. Everyone knows that Leighton Meester can outact Blake Lively.
I do wonder if it's one of those things too when any of these actors signed on to be in a CW show
Mm-hmm.
forever. You know, WB and
Mm-hmm.
CW, it wasn't exactly considered the highlight of acting, you know, when you get out
Mm-hmm.
there. These were teen shows. They didn't always get the best critiques, although some of them certainly did. Lest we forget the Buffys, like there were Veronica Mars, there were some really good ones. So I think for a lot of these actors, it probably felt like, okay, I'll do this for a few years, then I can do the stuff that I want to do. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like for Leighton, it was probably like, I gotta eat up as much of this as I can and make this work for me as much as I can. And she definitely did. But she also probably thought, like, this is probably not going to be this amazing thing for me. Little did she know.
Little did she know. I have to ask another question though. What do you think what it was about Chuck and Blair's pairing that made people obsessed? Like this was not supposed to be the show's one true pairing, but
Hmm.
by the end the writers have said, yeah, they are endgame. We love them. And one thing I'm going to say is I think that it's because it's relatable. I think there are a lot of real life Chucks and
Mm.
Blairs. So here are some examples. King Charles and Queen Camilla, they're a real life Chuck and Blair. You can't keep them away from each other. It's a gravitational
Oh
pull. They will
God.
destroy countries to be
Oh my
together,
God.
right?
True.
BJ Novak and Mindy Kaling, I feel like are a real life Chuck and Blair.
Yeah.
Just people who you can't keep them apart. The attraction is that powerful. So what do you think it was about this pairing?
I love those comparisons. I think you're right. I also think it really was the chemistry between those two actors. It was really spicy and
Mm-hmm.
sexy. And that's not that common, even in these great teen TV shows. And it always felt like they were always on the edge of danger and risk. And I think that's always so fun to watch. And when you start watching two people who have that much chemistry, you do really start to believe they've got to be in love off screen. And then you develop that whole relationship with them, that parasocial one that we've talked about
Mm-hmm.
forever. And that's enough, honestly. Like I could see one photo of them now and I would still be transported right back. Loving them together, even though you and I agree that was not our ultimate OTP. Even though I loved them for so long together, in
Mm-hmm.
the end, you and I both preferred her with Dan because they also had amazing chemistry.
I think it's that when you saw those two people on screen, and this is going to sound, I guess, really shallow, you just really bought into the idea that they had had transcendently good sex. Like, it
Oh,
just,
thank you for
like,
summarizing what I said in a perfect line. Thank you. That's exactly what I
you
meant.
You just believed it. Like it was when she has sex with him in the limo, you really believe that not only, I mean, is this her sexual awakening, but his too, because up until that, he'd never had sex with someone he liked. And so then he's like, oh my God, it's even better with someone I like. Like they are sexually obsessed with each other before they fall in love. And yeah, I think their relationship is mostly based on sex. I do not believe that it's based on much more.
Had
But
to be.
apparently, it's so transcendent that they can't keep away from each other. It's enough. It's the foundation
Yeah.
of their love.
I think you're right. And I do want to add one thing. And again, Ed Westwick is also problematic. However,
Hmm.
in the context of the show, he was also a really great actor. Like that was a pretty
Yeah.
good, I will say the lead three were quite
Hmm.
strong, like unexpectedly so for a CW show. And he was really fantastic. So the two of them kind of getting to bounce off each other, it was just such a delight. It was really fun to see that. They were so good. Ah,
And you know what? Ed was their only choice for that role because at one point they didn't know if they could get his work visa arranged in time and they refused to recast it. So, and if you look at season 1, when they allow that character to have more range, because in season 1, Chuck has some witty lines. He's not all doom and gloom because he becomes really depressing later.
Yeah.
He's an amazing actor. And as much as he is problematic, he can act and he can sell a scene. It's layered, it's textured. Like you can see the wheels turning. Like both he and Leighton are really good at acting with their eyes. They're really, really good at that and little micro expressions that make the difference. And I think that was part of it because you could always tell that they were in love with each other, at least. And I don't know if that's what the writers even told them to do, but that's how they were playing it. They were playing it as underneath it all, we're in love and we are too messed up to tell each other.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
So Gossip Girl was never a Nielsen #1 hit, but it was zeitgeisty as hell. Gossip Girl was never a Nielsen #1 hit, but it was zeitgeisty as hell. New York Magazine even dubbed it the best show ever. There was an asterisk, but still. Soon, there were Gossip Girl tours of New York City where guides would take eager fans to the restaurants and hotels frequented by the show's characters. The famous journalist Jessica Pressler even got her start writing Gossip Girl recaps for Vulture. By the way, Pressler went on to write the articles upon which Hustlers and Inventing Anna are based. So this superstar journalist got her training writing about Gossip Girl, which I kind of love.
Me too.
Some New York prep schools even banned their students from watching the show, declaring it a bad influence, which it was. My favorite part about Gossip Girl, the most absurd part, is the fact that sometimes they go to bars drinking in their school uniforms, which is an inherent admission that you are underage, and then they get served. How does that happen?
That's true. That's so true. Well, listen, the girls were able to do a nice spin on that. Maybe they didn't always realize.
So that's the other thing about the uniforms. The school has a uniform, but they don't care if you actually wear it. So
yeah,
those kids would have always been in detention at my school. You got a uniform infraction if you didn't wear your uniform properly. So while we had the same tartans, I didn't look sexy like Serena, right? I was also a busty teen and I wasn't allowed to style my uniform so I looked, super curvy. I just looked really frumpy. I had to wear these box shirts. And in fact, at one point we got these special summer sort of polos that actually did flatter my curves. And I was the only person busty enough to fill it out. And the head of the school saw me and I could tell. She was like, damn it, we didn't make it boxy enough. Note to self. Because she came up to me and said to me, but it was clearly meant to be a criticism, even though it sounded like a compliment. She's like, you look gorgeous. And so she was like, damn it. It needs to be boxier. Hide the body. Hide the figure, right? Boxier shirts next time, right? It was meant we failed. This flatters you too well.
Oh my God, I could not live in that environment, but that is hilarious. Good for you.
I never got a single uniform infraction.
Wow, well done, Sarah. Cheers
Blair
to
Waldorf
that.
would have hated me.
I know, it's true.
Never.
It's true.
I know. We would not have been friends.
Well
So it's
done.
funny that I love that character. Okay. So, and it was a bad influence, right? The kids never did their homework. So if you're in New York prep school and you're like, kids, you need to get into university. Stop watching the show. It encourages you not to do your homework. They also never do co-curriculars besides Dan. Dan is the only one who seems to care about his CV. He's writing stories for the New Yorker. He's on the soccer team. He actually cares. They go on and on about how Blair is the most accomplished girl at Constance. What has Blair ever done? She has no co-curricular resume. She could not get into Yale. Why was she even applying?
I certainly would have loved to see them in their clubs, maybe doing yearbook. I do remember a specific scene of Blair and Serena playing, was it polo? But I don't know if that was just gym class. I have no idea. Okay, never mind. You're right. All these kids were doing was drinking and fucking and arguing and I don't get it. They were behaving very much like 20-somethings, which when I was their age, or when I was watching this, I was very much like, oh my God, am I supposed to be doing some of this stuff? I am very delayed. Whoa.
So I watched it when I was in my 20s. So prep school is behind me, and I knew that it was not an accurate depiction of high school life. I knew that. But it did actually feel true to how your early 20s are. It was debaucherous in the way they are. And because Leighton Meester was my age, in my head, I was just like, these kids are just in their 20s, right? They're not actually in high school, right? And that's how you're supposed to relate to them, I think. Otherwise, it's weird that they're having so much sex and you're watching them. because they're
I
children
know.
having sex if you just don't think about them as 20-somethings.
They went through a lot. Lest we forget there was even a murder. Everything happened in this show.
Everything. Well, that was season 1 when we were still recovering from Desperate
Was
Housewives and
that
everything
season
had.
one?
Yeah, well, actually, there are multiple murders, I
There were
think.
multiple. I was thinking of Serena's revelation,
But
but
that's
I
season
digress.
1.
That
See,
was
so
season one. You're kidding.
yeah, that one's season 1. There are other murders later.
Okay.
And Chuck has to murder his father in a scene that's very reminiscent of the Lion King's conclusion, where like,
Oh my
Simba
God.
kills Mufasa.
Oh God, we need a whole show for this. Anyway, go on, Sarah.
Okay. So Blair Waldorf quickly became one of the most beloved soap opera characters since Susan Lucci's Erica Kane. And I do maintain that Leighton Meester is the Susan Lucci of our generation.
Yeah,
Yeah, obviously. And I mean that as a total compliment.
I'm with you.
But this witty mean girl wasn't just fun to watch. The character provided some powerful social commentary about femininity in the post-feminist era, which is a term many scholars use for the pre-Me Too period in the 90s and 00s, when the mainstream belief was the feminist. So, post-feminism is a term that many scholars use to refer to the pre-Me Too era of the 90s and 00s, when the mainstream belief was that the work of feminism was done. It was irrelevant. It was over. So, I myself wrote an essay for my grad school program in gender studies on Blair Waldorf as a symbol of post-feminist. I myself wrote an essay for my grad school program in gender studies on Blair Waldorf as a symbol of the failure of post-feminism. So I wrote, quote, Blair Waldorf is not a feminist character. She's an argument for why young women still need feminism. If you look back on season 1, the word feminism never comes up once. No one says it. It's intentionally a feminist vacuum, in my opinion. Seriously, as portrayed on the show, the Upper East Side, just no one knows about gender studies. No one knows about feminism. No one's ever heard of Gloria Steinem. In the absence of feminism and gender theory, Blair continues to pursue traditional models of femininity and gets burned at every turn. She struggles with bulimia to meet her fashion designer mother's impossible beauty standards for women. Not wanting to be deemed slutty, she waits to have sex with her boyfriend, only to have her best friend sleep with Nate first. Blair tries to succeed within the patriarchal capitalist system in which she was raised, one where young girls are eviscerated for everything from their sex lives to their clothes by Gossip Girl, the all-seeing eye. However, she fails at every turn. She can't be perfect. As a result, Blair is always angry. She doesn't even necessarily know why, but she lashes out at people. This Park Avenue princess refuses to take patriarchy lying down, and even though I don't love how she bullies people, I do like the anger. I like how this character shows us that even for the most privileged people, patriarchy is horrible. If only a nice teacher had given Blair some feminist books and helped empower her, Blair might not have felt the need to bully other girls in order to prove she was strong. By the finale of season 2, when Chuck Bass finally declared his undying love for Blair Waldorf after flying to Germany to buy her lingerie, which is a very weird thing to do, and Gossip Girl herself declared Serena irrelevant as her superlative at high school graduation, it seemed like Blair Waldorf, this iconic character, was just the undisputed star of the show. Not only did I think she had something to say about modern femininity, she just was at the center of every plot line. When they filmed the season 4 premiere in Paris, Josh Schwartz actually recalls how the Parisian teen girls swarmed the set and they all screamed, Leighton! Leighton! Leighton Meester also... I know, it's cute. Leighton Meester also reportedly had more expensive clothes. Her wardrobe cost more money, which, like, if you look at the pieces, yes, of course they did.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what is Serena wearing? The thing about Leighton Meester's clothes, now that I'm closer to the age of Blair's mom than Blair, I'm like, I love those clothes. She looks adorable. This is how every prep school mom wants their daughter to dress, and they never do. Like, I remember my mom taking me to Holt Renfrew and getting so mad at me that I wanted to wear sweatpants, which in retrospect was inappropriate to wear to Holt Renfrew. I agree with her. Like, or anywhere really. Like, why were we wearing sweatpants everywhere at this period in time? And I remember her trying to teach me how to dress, my patient mother, trying to be like, you'll look so cute if you just wear this outfit. And it was exactly like the stuff Blair was wearing on Gossip Girl. Like, let's put you in this navy little outfit with red tights. And Oh my God, I wish I'd spent my hottest years dressed like that. Why didn't I
I
do that?
know. I know. So for me, it wasn't so much Blair's style, it was Serena's style, which I know is crazy because looking back now, especially, my God, what was Serena wearing, as you said? But I think it was one of those things. I remember me and my sister used to talk about this because it was always like, you're either
Mm-hmm.
the blonde or the brunette. You're either this one or that one. It was like the
Mm-hmm.
Mary Kay versus Ashley, the
Yeah.
Brangelina of it all. It was like, so I was always like, no, I identify more with her style, but I identify with Blair in every other way. So I loved the little leather jackets. I loved the tall boots. I loved the layering that Serena always did. I loved everything she did with her hair. And it definitely seeped into my style a little bit. In fact, I think it's still there a little bit today. But yes, just like you, I have way more appreciation now for Blair's style. And I think Blair's style is actually more the trend now than it
Mm-hmm.
even was then. Like she was very refreshing at the time in many ways, including the what she was wearing every day. I remember even just, started wearing. I don't know if it was because of Gossip Girl or what kind of got this in my head. It might have been the Olsen twins, but I would start taking like just a giant purse to school instead of a regular bag because I was like, backpacks are so boring. I want to be more
Yeah.
stylish. I'm gonna take a giant purse to school. And then I would watch Gossip Girl and they were doing the same thing and I was like, see, I was onto something. And it just made me feel so good. Like you could do these tiny little changes and it just felt like you were in and you were doing the right thing and you were being more you and you're being a little cooler. It's so embarrassing to think of now, but honestly, that did it for me. I loved it. I loved it. Adding a little scarf here and there had been a little pair of flats. Like I love that Blair always had a pair of flats, never shied away from those.
Style, like, ugh, if only I had listened
If
to my mother.
only.
Kids, if you're listening to this, just dress the way your mom wants you to dress. She knows what she's doing.
They'll get there. They'll get there. They got to figure it out on their own. I needed time to get there.
I really hope Beatrix lets me dress her like Blair Waldorf when
I
she's
don't.
older.
Beatrix is too feisty. It's not going to
She
happen,
won't.
Sarah. Maybe
She
years from
won't.
now.
She
Yeah.
won't. I know.
No, no,
I
no.
know. But now I feel my mother's pain. Like it's anticipatory pain. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna try to get you these 11 fits. You're gonna be like, oh mom, even though it's way cuter than the weird yoga
Listen,
pants you want to wear.
some of us start off as a Serena and then we graduate to a Blair, and I think that B is just like that. She's gonna have a little leather jacket. It suits her. It already suits her. Anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So we already talked a little bit about the style on the show, but regardless of how Gossip Girl sidelined Serena, you wouldn't know it from how ascendant Blake Lively became in the world outside of the show. After breaking up with Gossip Girl co-star Penn Badgley, she even dated Leonardo DiCaprio. She had roles in prestige pictures like Ben Affleck's The Town. She appeared in a campaign for Chanel. She hosted Saturday Night Live. Inevitably, theories emerged that Blake and Leighton had a rivalry in real life. There have also been rumblings throughout the years that Blake likely wasn't the most welcoming presence on the Gossip
Hmm.
Girl set. But honestly, I don't know how much credence I give to those rumors because probably the person who spoke most candidly about thinking Blake Lively was kind of mean on set was Armie Hammer. And
Ugh.
like, he's horrible. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Did he threaten to cannibalize her and then she gave him pushback? Like, why didn't he like her? I don't know. Like,
I
so I
agree.
think those are mostly just unsubstantiated rumors. However, there were some incidents of Blake seemingly being quite mean to Leighton, and we do have to admit this. I do want to remind everyone these kids were young. This was basically their first real job. They were
Mm.
in their 20s. But you can even find online examples of Blake seemingly making jokes about how Leighton was, quote, born in a cage, meaning like born in jail,
Mm.
which is a real thing. That is the truth. And Leighton has never tried to hide that when she was born, her mother was serving time. She's never tried to hide that. But I mean, having someone constantly remind you of this traumatic birth story, it's not nice. That's not good workplace behavior. I do have to say that. And you can find
Yeah.
videos online of her making these jokes. Like you can find that. That's quite
Mm.
mean. But besides that, Blake and Leighton have never really even hinted at a rivalry. They don't follow each other on their social media. But you know what? How many former colleagues do you follow? That doesn't mean you have a rivalry with them or hate them. Just,
Yeah.
sometimes you just work with someone and you're not friends. It doesn't mean you dislike them. So, my question to you, Sadaf, is do you think some millennial women hate Blake Lively simply because we were Team Blair, not Team Serena when Gossip Girl aired?
100%. I think it's also in much the same way that like we just wish that Leighton was Blair, I think Blake has taken on some of the Serena van der Woodsen-ness, and I think that's playing out right now, again, as we've referenced so many times with this Justin Baldoni war. And
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it is that she also just has that classic look of, as you always say, the ingenue. She's a blonde bombshell. She's stunning. She's
Mm-hmm.
married to another movie star, and she's always on a tabloid somewhere. I think that those people tend to become the ones that you sort of hate or love to hate, or, it's just not the person that you end up rallying for. We always want to go for the underdog. And in a weird way, Blair was an underdog. And
In a
Leighton,
weird way.
yeah, and Leighton, I would say, was the underdog of the show or of the cast. Shockingly, even though she was probably the best actor, I would say the same for
Mm-hmm.
Penn Badgley, although now they're definitely getting a little more due. I mean, I think Leighton deserves a little bit more right now, but
Yeah, I was gonna
um,
say.
yeah. So I think even in that sense, it's just you naturally end up kind of rooting for that person. I don't think it's fair for Blake. I don't know if she's an actual asshole. Maybe she is, but it's hard to say now, isn't it? I find it very difficult to make a call. We don't know the girl, but even if she was a dick, there's no real proof for it. I don't know. There's not much to go by. And as you said, they never really said that they were feuding in any way. You know what I always wanted? I always wanted these two to kiss on the show. And the boys should have kissed. Like there was so
Oh
much
yeah.
do you remember all that campaigning they did? There was definitely an era where a lot of the campaigning was very homoerotic. They would do that for just about every show. And I remember
Yeah.
seeing photos of or shots of Blake and Blair, like kind of like on the verge of making out. And
Yeah.
I was like, yes, girls, do it. Let's have
Yeah.
that side. Let's just have like a flipped episode or something.
It's
Everybody
they have no
kiss.
chemistry though. This is how bad an actor Blake Lively is, and I feel terrible for her for what Justin Baldoni put her through. That's awful. But on a separate note, she's a bad actor, and she's so bad that even Leighton Meester can't have chemistry with her. Like there are some scenes where they're like in a bed together, cuddling, and it doesn't even go into my mind that they might make out because there's no tension. And Leighton Meester
Yeah.
can have sexual tension with anyone, right? Like she's so good at creating that. So I just think that the acting ability wasn't there to support it. However, it is canon that Chuck Bass is bisexual. They just don't explore it. That is
Yeah.
canon. They tell you
True.
that multiple times. And in that's why new Chuck, and that's what I'm going to call him in the update, right? In the 2021 version. I don't even know the character's name. He's just new Chuck. He is out bisexual. And when he
Oh.
decides he wants to get with blonde Blair, I don't know her name either. She's blonde and she's Blair. She has a fashion designer mother and lives on Park Avenue, which is blonde Blair. He decides he wants to sleep with her. Like literally in the first episode, he's making comments about how he wants to see her body. He like spots her boyfriend going down on her and then like makes eye contact with her the whole time. Like just some really salacious stuff. Like he's into it.
Mhm.
Like totally like more sexually aggressive Chuck Bass. And she's into it, but the subtext is very much, it's gonna take me half a season to leave my boring boyfriend.
Yeah.
Just like in the original. And then he's all like, I can just seduce you both. And then he seduces her boyfriend, and then they have a throuple. So, so that's just what obviously season one Chuck should have done because he really valued his friendship with Nate. He was bisexual. He was in love with Blair. He just should have been like, let's not create a conflict. I can sleep with both of you. But he doesn't do that. He's less strategic. So while Gossip Girl became a pop culture phenomenon for its glamorous depiction of life in the Upper East Side, the reality of making the show wasn't so luxurious. The cast would often show up at dawn and leave after dark, with paparazzi and fans hounding them on the streets of Manhattan as they filmed their scenes. The teenage Taylor Momsen, who was only 16 at the time, even ended up in tabloids wearing a short skirt, and upsettingly, you could see the string of her tampon. This is something she's spoken about at length. Just the scrutiny. This got published. It was really invasive. It's really upsetting. She later left the show to pursue her music. So, Sadaf, do you think it would have been easier for the stars today? If the show had premiered now, do we think we would have been more respectful of these young people? Or do you think there would have been just as much paparazzi attention? Do you think we still would have had a picture of a tampon string in our tabloids?
Well, it's interesting you say. I mean, now we have this new version to compare to, and of course, it doesn't come close. I didn't even get
Mm-hmm.
through it. So that one didn't seem to pick up with audiences. I feel like it really was of a time. Again, I think the WBCW era was of a
Mm-hmm.
time. Charmed, I don't think could happen now. I don't think Buffy could even take off now in the same way. This was our generational thing, and I don't know that another one could get it. Sorry. But yeah, even these actors, like I think so much of it was due to them. And again, their chemistry, how beautiful they were, how they worked together, their off-screen
Mm-hmm.
dramas. So I don't know that it could pick up in the same way. I really don't. What do you think?
I do think they were lightning in a bottle. I agree. And, Blake Lively was such, Blake Lively was basically, if you defined the word babe with a picture, that would be Blake Lively.
Yeah.
And then Leighton Meester is like the human incarnation of lip gloss. She's so pretty. Like if lip gloss were a
Oh,
person, she'd be
I
Leighton
love
Meester.
that.
It's
Yeah. Oh, that's
so
good.
pretty.
Yeah.
Like the cast was so beautiful. Ed Westwick, as problematic as he now is, undeniably sexy. The man
Oh
is
God.
incredibly
I was in
sexy.
love.
Penn
Yeah.
Badgley also sexy. Chase Crawford just looks like Zac Efron.
Wallpaper?
But
Wallpaper.
he's cute. He looks like more
Yeah,
bland Zac Efron. He even has the Zac Efron
he does.
haircut in season one, right? The High
He
School Musical
does.
haircut. So they were all incredibly attractive. Jessica Zora also really beautiful. For the most part, they're pretty charismatic performers. I mean, for the most part, not all of them. But
Yeah.
you're right. I think it was lightning in a bottle. So, well, some mysteries of the show, like whether Blake and Leighton really got along on set, might never be solved to our satisfaction. One question that was answered to pretty much no one's liking was this: who was the titular Gossip Girl? Fans debated this for 6 seasons. In the books, it's actually Eric Serena's brother. And many fans of the TV series thought it should have been Dorota, which makes sense because you have this commentary of the upper classes coming from within. It's very, if you know about standpoint theory, it will remind you of that. The idea that the people who work for the upper classes actually know the most about the world because they know about their experiences, but they also know about the intimate lives of the ruling class and of the elites. So, from a feminist perspective, it would have made sense for it to be Dorota. And Mayor Mike Bloomberg agrees with me. Do you remember the finale where
What?
they have that montage of all the
Oh,
people reacting to who Gossip Girl was? And Mayor Bloomberg says to his staffer, I thought it was Dorota.
I forgot about that. That's a dedicated
That
viewer.
chef's kiss. And like that was a man who knew how important that was for New York tourism. And he's like, all right, I'll do this. I'll do it. I'll say I thought it was Dorota. Who's Dorota? I don't need to know. Just give me the line. Give me the line. Um, but to this day, there has been a debate about that. So, Sadaf, what did you think when they revealed that it was actually Dan Humphrey who had been Gossip Girl the whole time? And he basically did it so he could make himself cooler. He was a lonely boy. No one knew his name. He shows up at that party that he's accidentally invited to, kind of like Penn in real life going to Leighton's party. And he thinks, how do I become an insider? I'm going to cyberbully these girls until they want to sleep with me.
I was absolutely outraged. In fact, this might be one of the most biggest disappointments of my life when it comes to the
Mm-hmm.
TV and movies that I watched. I hold it to this day. It's like a pit in my
Mm-hmm.
stomach. I was so mad. And I remember all my friends, we were all so outraged. We were all talking about it again the next day. And to the point where, like, even Penn Badgley himself said it was a little ridiculous. They were all shocked. I also, by this time, though, I have to say, I had really, I mean, I watched it all. And in fact, I've watched it numerous times, but by this time, I had really fallen off the wagon. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they jumped the shark well before.
Yeah.
It's really devastating because I think the first couple of seasons were really phenomenal television.
Yeah.
And then it just completely goes to shit, sorry to say. And
Yeah.
that says it all, doesn't it? I just don't even understand that choice. I can't comprehend it.
No, it doesn't make sense because there are literal scenes where he emails Gossip Girl when he's alone and
Yes.
Gossip Girl emails him back. So if you were Gossip Girl, why would you do that? And how is that even possible? It defies the laws of physics. So he's obviously not Gossip Girl. Uh, And then they claimed like, oh yeah, we knew for a while he was Gossip Girl. No, you didn't. Guys,
No,
like,
they
come on.
didn't.
They didn't. It makes no sense. It also makes it so disgusting. And I don't think you could get away with this today. He's basically an incel, right? I think that this is very
Yeah.
pre-Me Too. The idea that it would be okay to cyberbully girls until they want to sleep with you. And the only character who has a problem with this in the finale, when they reveal that Gossip Girl was Dan the whole time, is Blair. And then they kind of chide her for it. They're like, your life's fine. Why do you care? And she's having kind of this revelation, I think, that she's just married Chuck Bass, whom she had to marry because she witnessed him commit a murder and they don't want to go to jail. So, and I think in this, she's kind of having this revelation, at least this is what I think she's doing, where she realizes my whole life's trajectory would be different. Like I probably would have gone to Yale if no one had talked about how I slept with Chuck and cheated on my boyfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have gotten this reputation. I might have just lived a normal life. I might not be married to the guy who murdered his father, whom I'm in love with, but it's really a trauma bond. Like I had no choice and he created this life for me. And then I slept with him and I wouldn't have slept with him had I known he was Gossip Girl. So it kind of feels sexual assault adjacent, right? Like she slept with Dan. So she's the only one who feels abused and wronged by it. And everyone else just scoffs. And it's actually, I find, so offensive. Like she's basically saying like, what he did to us was wrong. He abused us and no one believes her.
Well, I think it's also that shows you how much of a desecration of the characters in the show's book it was, that I would have been so hurt and offended if I was the writer. But it also tells you just how much no one cared anymore because nobody was fighting for whatever this show was in the beginning. It's really sad. I mean, even the way that where all of the characters end up in the end makes zero sense. And the fact that Blair and Dan had this really beautiful love at one point. This completely destroys that. I don't know what the point of that was. None of it holds up. None of it makes sense. I don't even like talking about it, Sarah. I encourage everyone to do what I do, which is operate as if that season never happened, and you will be much better off, okay?
If it had ended in Monte Carlo with Blair basically showing up saying to Chuck, like, you paid my dowry so I could be free. You didn't tell me. You let me like have a dalliance with Dan. You've learned how not to treat me like she had a dowry. You learned how not to treat me like property. Now I'm betting on you. And if it had ended with them just like ending up together with funds We Are Young playing, great ending. Great ending. And then the next season is so weird because not only do we find out Dan's Gossip Girl, but the whole season, Chuck is doing this very weird thing where he's like breadcrumbing Blair, where she's wearing an engagement ring around her neck, but he's calling her his friend because she can't be his girlfriend. She can only be his wife. Like they have this pact that they can never date. They can only get married. This is so weird. And it's an actual plot. And this proves my theory. Chuck Bass proves my theory that it is easier to get a millennial man to marry you than to call you his girlfriend. It really is.
Oh my God, that is so sad and pathetic. That's going to be our running line for this episode. Jesus.
Because he marries her so quickly, but it takes her so many seasons to be his girlfriend.
It's so many stupid.
Okay, so perhaps an even bigger debate that was inspired by Gossip Girl, even bigger than whether or not Dan should have been Gossip Girl, is the debate between Dare fans and Cher fans. So Cher is the name that fans gave to Chuck and Blair. Dare is the name that fans gave to Dan and Blair, who became a couple briefly in season 5. So Josh Schwartz even said that by the end of the show's run, his Twitter feed was just a constant stream of fights between Dare fans and Cher fans about which couple was better and which couple should be endgame. So, Sadaf, did you have a preference? And do you think Cher would have been endgame today over Dare?
I was a deep Cher fan for the first half, and then a deep Dare fan for the second half, which is really remarkable on the one hand because that's good writing, good acting for you if you can actually have two incredible romantic pairs like that, and it's the same actress too in both cases. I don't think I've ever seen that since. Like that was really impressive, to the point where I really was like, you know what? I've been rooting for Cher being endgame all this time now. I need it to be Dare. They've shown me they're much healthier, much better, and actually more beautiful in terms of the show and the writing of it, that these two unlikely people would fall in love when before they probably were so turned off by each other. It was wonderful. But again, as I've said, I don't know what was going on in the writers' minds.
Yeah. Here's my issue. I mean, I do agree. Like, after season 4, even Perez Hilton, who's not known for feminist commentary, saw the episode where Chuck finds out that Blair is going to become a princess and marry Louis, and he grabs her, cuts her face accidentally by smashing a window, but does intend to slash the window and screams at her, "You're mine, you can't marry anyone else." That was abusive. It's objectively abusive. And even Perez Hilton said, the show is glamorizing abusive relationships. This is bad for kids. Why are you doing that? And post Me Too, I don't think you could have gotten away from that storyline and still redeemed the character.
No.
Having said that, that character does try to redeem himself. He pays her dowry, so it's kind of reparations. He goes to therapy. He gets a dog. Whereas Dan, when I rewatched the series for the first time, when I was doing the preparation for this episode, you realize that Dan, if he was Gossip Girl the whole time, is such a dick. Like the episode where they have sex for the first time, and he almost breaks up with her because the sex isn't good. I'm like, my man, this girl just exited an abusive marriage to a prince. She just had a pregnancy loss when she was 5 months pregnant. And maybe she's not going to have the kinky sex that you chronicled in Gossip Girl. Like, he's so entitled to have the Chuck Bass style limo sex. Like, he's been writing about it for years. He comes off as such an entitled jerk. Like, yes, this is going to be the best sex I've ever had. It's going to blow my mind. And it makes sense that that character in that place isn't ready to have, super adventurous sex. But he's about to break up with her until she gets drunk and then has sex with him in an elevator.
By the way, though, that elevator sex, I still think about. I can replay that whole scene in my head now. It was wonderful and delicious. But you are absolutely right. In fact, right to the very beginning, even when he's with Serena, even when he is introduced in the beginning, he's not great. I mean, he has those moments, so many moments, where he's just judging everybody who's richer and kind of just, especially with Serena, I didn't like the way that he was all of the time in retrospect. It's just so funny how much of these shows don't hold up, but at the time when you're watching them, nothing could be better. I think Gossip Girl's a good example of that.
I think so. So when I was watching this show, I think this is the weirdest part of Gossip Girl. And maybe it's because I wasn't one of the billionaires at my school. I did go to school with some billionaires, but I wasn't one of them. Maybe when the kids who had parents who were professionals weren't there, they did talk like this and talk about how we were all poor and we were all losers. But this is not the depiction of private school that makes sense to me. Like there were more Dans at private school than there were Serenas and Blairs. There are only so many billionaires in the world. And so because we were the critical mass, we kind of dictated what people did. So we weren't going to Per Se or Toronto's version of Per Se every week, right? Not everyone was walking around in Louboutins all the time, right? Like these are not things that happened. We went to the movies, we shopped at, nice stores for if you're a teen, but like, the Gap or Aritzia, people were not going to Bendel's and Bergdorf's every single day and refusing to wear the same dress twice. So like when I remember in university watching Dan, and I remember this is one character detail, he had the more expensive black Mac laptop. And my parents had, as a nice gift for me, bought me the white Mac laptop, which was slightly cheaper. You paid more for the premium. And I'm like, I am to believe that this person thinks he's poor and he has the black Mac. Like, screw him. You're not poor. You're just comparing yourself to the richest people in the society. And you're mad that you don't have as much money as they have, but you're so overprivileged. Like, I couldn't deal with his whining.
I mean, Sarah, they lived in a massive Brooklyn loft. Come on now. Come on now.
His dad was a rock star. Like, these kids are not poor. They're not even poor by prep school standards. This is just the weirdest depiction. I'm like, go find the other upper middle class kids. Like, they're at one point they do say they're on a partial scholarship, but that's actually fairly common if you have two kids in private school and you're upper middle class, because it is like, those tuition is really expensive. But if they're both on partial scholarships, that's equivalent to one kid's tuition. And tuition, I mean, I don't know what it was at the time, but now for those schools, it's like $50,000-$60,000. So Rufus has that much money to spend. It's just because he has two kids that he can't afford it, right? So he's still rich.
Oh, he definitely is. He definitely is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's enough about how much I hated Dare and how much I hate Dan. I mean, Chuck obviously is problematic too. Like, I get it. I understand. But you're right. Dan and Blair had amazing chemistry. And I think actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they hooked up in real life. I don't know for a fact. If they did, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think there could have been something, although
I think he had a crush on her at the very least. And I mean, Ed Westbrook has said, I'm in love with her.
Yeah.
Literally talks about her the way Chuck Bass talks about her. Like, he's given interviews where he's like, she's mine. I'm in love with her.
I really believe those two hooked up. I really do. At least like made out. Listen to me, Sarah. You cannot have chemistry like that on TV, and it's not there in real life. B, it's really hard not to act on that. And they were at that age when they were partying and they were out all the time. I'm just saying.
Listen, they probably all had sex with each other at various
That's what I
points.
think.
Like, probably, why not? Like, they're all hot. They're
I
all,
would
they
have.
don't have time to meet other people. Like, why
Yeah.
not? So today, Gigi's original cast has experienced varying degrees of success. Blake Lively is by far the biggest household name. I mean, she's married to Ryan Reynolds, who's a Marvel star. Her new movie, Another Simple Favor, is coming out, which is actually the Blake I want. I want to see Blake in a thriller where she gets bested by a petite, smarter brunette. That is what I want.
Not that. I mean, I cannot stand me Anna Kendrick or that character. But see, well, you know what? I could go too far into this, but carry on, Sarah. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I mean, it would have been better with Leighton. Honestly,
Yes.
I would have been better with Leighton, but almost everything would be better with Leighton. Just cast Leighton Meester, people.
Leighton.
Just cast her.
Why
can't she be in things?
Last week we said we want Kaylee Cuoco and everything. We also want Leighton Meester and everything. Okay, these are the girls who should be getting called up number one on the call sheet. I'm just saying.
Kaylee Cuoco produces a lot of her own projects. Next time, can she produce one where she and Leighton Meester are like best friends?
Oh, that would be really great, actually. She needs to produce a television show for Leighton because Leighton is desperately trying to find a show, and everything she chooses does not work. Like, it's just odd. Such misfires. I feel like nobody knows what to do with her.
She's too talented and too pretty, and I think that that's the issue. And I actually think it's the issue because she's at that age where you can't be the ingenue anymore. Here's the thing. She is going to be like Christine Baranski. Years from now, we will just realize she was always underrated and she will be the greatest TV actress of her generation, right? Christine Baranski has been working consistently. Leighton, I have full faith, will have her Christine Baranski moment. She'll find her version of the good wife when she's older. Right now, she's really focused on being a mom, and she talks about that. So I think she wants TV shows because they represent stability and the ability to be home for dinner.
I love that. Yeah, you're right. And she has said that for sure. I think also she often tends to get slotted as a straight man, which is really weird because she's really funny and she can also do drama really well. I think that's one key issue. Whereas someone like John Hamm, who I feel like is suffering in a similar way, is a really good dramatic actor and I think better than comedically. But everybody just keeps putting him in these comedy roles. And I'm like, guys, I know he was funny in Bridesmaids and maybe in a couple skits on SNL, but that's not what this man was built to do. Stop it. Stop it.
Absolutely. So let's continue with our retrospective. So Chase Crawford can now be seen on Prime's The Boys. So good for him. He's still a working actor.
And that fits him, doesn't it? He gets to be like a big meaty guy, brawn. He's also gotten a bit better. Like he's better than he was in Gossip Girl.
Oh yeah, he's improved. I mean, as one thing I did like about that character, and I do think that Gossip Girl tells you the 5 character types you'll date, sorry, the 3 character types you'll date in prep school. Because everyone is going to date a Dan, a Chuck, and a Nate. Those are the 3 boys you meet in prep school. I married a Nate.
Interesting.
I believe I married a Nate. I told my husband that, and he wasn't offended. He was like, yeah, he seems like a good guy. He was like, okay, I married a Nate. We've all dated a Chuck. Everyone has a Chuck. And most of us have dated a Dan or two, or a Dan has tried to date us, tried to bully us into dating him. But good for Chase. He's found where he's supposed to be. And Penn Badgley continues to portray Dan Humphrey on a spinoff of GG called You, where Dan works at a bookstore and stalks and kills hot NYC women. It's on brand. That's a joke, but it basically could be a GG spinoff.
No, you're right. He does feel like an evolution of Dan Humphrey. It's so wild. I have to say, side note, I'm fascinated by his career because he always, much like Dan Humphrey, liked to act like he was above the mainstream culture, and yet he's always been at the very center of it, and proudly so. I find that very funny, but maybe it's also a compliment. You know, it's good for everyone to know the lane they belong in, and he certainly knows his. But he's also a very good actor. I feel like he could do more.
He is a really good actor, and as much as I find him kind of insufferable when I hear him speak on Podcrushed, he's a great actor, and I feel like he's a good hang because Leighton is genuinely still his friend. And so I think she thinks that he's kind of like Jeremy Strong, like a little bit self-important, but really talented and ultimately endearing. Right. I think that's the vibe. And so I think working with him, you'd probably like him. And I feel like he probably never says a bad word about anybody. Like when they're talking about Gossip Girl, he makes it clear that he doesn't like the show, but he doesn't call out anyone.
Yeah. He's really good about it. And also another reason, I can't believe we're doing so much promo for Pod Crushed, but his co-hosts, his two female co-hosts are really great at kind
Hmm.
of slapping him across the face and waking
Yeah.
him up. It's really, really funny. But yeah, I could totally agree with you. He's actually very goofy. Check out his TikTok. It's very funny.
Yeah, he seems sweet. Like as much as I don't love consuming his content, he does seem like a genuinely decent and good
Agreed.
human being. So, on a more serious note, in 2017, Ed Westwick was accused of sexual misconduct by
Ooh.
multiple women. No charges have been officially laid, but that did happen, and that must be acknowledged. Jessica Soar, who played Vanessa, has also appeared on TV series like The Orville, so like good for her. She's still a working actor. And Taylor Momsen continues to work as a musician with her band, The Pretty Reckless. And good for her. She left to do what she wanted, which was her music, and she's still doing it. So I'm happy for her.
And she's really successful. And she on her own
Hmm.
has said so much about how much Gossip Girl just was not right for her. And
Yeah.
lest we forget, she was a child actor. And so I'm glad she's kind of
Hmm.
found the right space. Good on her.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And our queen, Leighton Meester, has debuted on a new CW series, Good Cop, Bad Cop. Yes, you can always go home. She's back at the CW. Leighton also delighted fans when she married and had two kids with Adam Brody, aka Seth Cohen from the OC. The couple now share two children, so they have definitively answered the question of what would happen if Blair Waldorf and Seth Cohen had a baby.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
it.
By the way, never, if you interview them, never mention that Seth and Blair got married. They hate it. They hate it when
I
people say that. Okay,
bet.
so here is my pitch for my Gossip Girl
Go.
spinoff. So,
Go.
okay, I put it in. Okay, I have fully realized script. Okay, Josh Schwartz, Stephanie Savage, call me. Okay. The previous reboot was the wrong direction. You should have given it the and just like that treatment. I don't want to hear what new kids are doing. I want to see the aged up version of the original characters who now have teens, by the way, because they all had kids absurdly young.
Mhm.
I want to see this. So here's my pitch. Here's what happens. Pilot episode. We find out Chuck Bass's plane has gone missing. Okay. Is he dead? We don't know. Maybe. Serena has disappeared. She was in drug rehab for her problem, which, fair enough. We've always known that she had that. I don't want to vilify the character for having these issues, but she has also disappeared. So Dan and Blair must co-parent their children. So Dan and Serena adopted an older child from Vietnam when they're on their honeymoon. That's how their child is the same age as Blair and Chuck's kids, because I know they got married later. Their daughter's named On. And then Blair has two children named Oscar and Henry. The first one is Oscar, and the first one's Henry. Then there's Oscar. I just like the name Oscar, and I had a girl, so I couldn't name anyone Oscar. So I
I
named
love
her
that.
Oscar. Okay, they are co-parenting their children. Basically, Blair is the surrogate mother to On, who doesn't really have a mother in her life, and they all share a grandmother because Lily is everyone's grandma. Remember,
Oh, I
she
love
adopted
that.
Chuck, right?
Yeah.
So they are brother and sister-in-law, and they must co-parent. All of a sudden, they must figure out how to be single parents together, but they've always had a sexual attraction. So they're on the verge of kind of dating. Their kids find out and say, no, we read Gossip Girl. Grandma Lily paid us not to, but then we read it to research you guys. Because actually, I feel like that's the only way they wouldn't have read it. And you can't date. It ended really badly last time. And like On can be like, Dad, it ended when you made a sex tape with Mom. Like, don't do that. Because that is how Dan and Blair's relationship ended. He made a sex tape with Serena. This is a real thing that happened.
I know.
Anyway, and so they can't date. Then I'm going to bring in Adam Brody. So because Blair's still grieving for Chuck, her stepfather Cyrus says, "You know who could help you with your grief? My really cool rabbi Seth Cohen,
Oh
who
my
just
God.
moved from the OC to New York." They have a dalliance for about 6 episodes. He goes back and gets together with his estranged wife, Summer. So I didn't break up Summer and Seth. Don't worry, guys. And then to comfort herself, Blair has a one-night stand with Dan and gets pregnant.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Not the pregnancy storyline. Not that.
Well, because she's always getting pregnant by accident. That's canon that the
is.
character never uses
She
birth
is.
control.
I love this, Sarah, and I'm actually angry because I want to see it come to fruition. But hey, you know what? A lot of series from our time are being revived. Who knows where all of these actors will be in 10, 20 years? Maybe we will get a look back. And I think it being Grandma Lily is kind of the perfect center point. That's great. I love it.
Grandma Lily is the new villain. She's
Yeah.
really upset that Dan and Blair are together, which makes sense because they were married to her children.
Yeah, and it brings Rufus back into her life, and she doesn't want Rufus around. Hello.
No. Although in real life, those two characters, like those two actors, Lily and Rufus, still hang out and may have hooked up. It
I
seems
know.
like
They
from their
definitely
Instagram
hooked
that
up.
they did.
They
Yeah,
definitely
they
hooked
had
up.
sex.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that brings us to hindsight is 2025. So Sadaf, this is the time where we get to say what we would have done differently, and what would you have done differently if you were in any way associated with the original Gossip Girl?
Well, I'll say the big one, which I know everybody is always thinking. I really wish Dan was not Gossip Girl. However, I think the problems came much earlier. I feel like, I think his name is Josh Safran. He took over as the showrunner. I think that was a mistake. I think that man is a clown and brought this show down. I feel like Josh Schwartz should have stayed as lead and point, and that was a bad idea. But here's the bigger thing that I think has always been the issue. These were like 22, 23, 24 episode seasons. That is way too much. If this show had been like 10 episodes a season, I feel like we would have had something close to prestige television, and we wouldn't have had to jump the shark 100 times. That's my big one. What about you, Sarah?
I don't know why they had all the characters wanting to get married so young. That was very weird. Yeah. That was very weird. I don't understand. I mean, in the end, Chuck and Blair have to get married because they need spousal privilege. They don't go to jail. But such a romantic reason for those two characters to end up together.
Yeah, God.
But why was she marrying a prince after dating him for a few months? And like, yes, of course he becomes abusive, because why else did he want to marry her like after 3 months when they were both 20? Like, it's so bizarre. Such a weird plot line. But also, yeah, Dan shouldn't have been Gossip Girl. I actually don't think we should have found out who Gossip Girl was. I think it's better if it's just a panopticon. Like at the end of season 2, Kristen Bell's voiceover basically says, like, she invites all the kids to a bar and is like, I'm all of you. I'm nothing without you because I'm your tips. That's who Gossip Girl is. I just collect them. I'm like, yeah, we don't need to know who this is. It doesn't matter.
I agree.
But then for some reason, they decided to answer this question in the finale and not to anyone's satisfaction.
I know it might have just been for ratings and for viewers for towards the end, but because it was not doing well. But I'm so with you. They should have just never given us the answer. And if you were going to give us the answer, make it goddamn Dorota or Eric. I agree. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It just make it Eric because it was Eric in the books. It's just easy. Just stick with the book.
It made sense too. It just made sense.
Absolutely. So on that note, it's time to end, although we could talk about this for years.
Truly. I mean, maybe we will do the OC next because this was too much fun.
So you can listen to The Reheat for free on the Seeker app. You can also find the show on the Frequency Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to hear more from me, you can find me on Instagram at SahagianSarah. Sadaf, where can our listeners find you?
Listeners can find me at _Stephason on Twitter. And if you liked this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe so other listeners can find us too. And if you'd like us to keep growing, I encourage you to go check out our Patreon. We've got a lot of other good stuff on there. That's patreon.com/3heat. Thanks for listening. And in the words of Gossip Girl, XOXO.